Of course. Here's Section 1 following your instructions, keeping the word count around 1,500 words, ensuring the story stays tight, purposeful, and vivid. They descended from the sky, like gods cloaked in fire and steel. Humanity's greatest telescopes had barely glimpsed a shimmering fleet before they tore through the upper atmosphere, their ships splitting clouds with soundless fury. Across the globe, governments scrambled to respond, but no protocol, no contingency plan could prepare them for the reality that unfolded. At first, the aliens seemed uninterested in communication. Their ships hovered ominously over major cities, casting enormous shadows over glass towers and crowded streets. When they finally spoke, their message was broadcast in every language known to man, but the tone was unmistakable: mockery, disdain, a casual cruelty that sent a chill through even the most hardened generals. "We have come not for conquest," their leader declared, his voice slithering through countless devices simultaneously. "Conquest suggests challenge. This is not a war. It is a correction. Accept your place. Creatures of the dirt." General Evelyn Sharp watched the transmission from the war room in Colorado Springs, her jaw clenched so tightly that her teeth ached. Around her, analysts and commanders traded grim looks. She had risen through ranks believing in human ingenuity, human stubbornness. But how did one fight gods? Across the ocean in Nairobi, Dr. Malik Okoye, a physicist specializing in theoretical propulsion, witnessed the first annihilation. A searing white lance of energy erupted from the mothership above, erasing a section of the city in an instant. No warning, no conditions. Malik clutched his daughter to his chest, his mind already racing, not with terror, but with questions. The first week unraveled humanity's illusions. Militaries dissolved under the sheer technological disparity. Earth's skies became prisons, its seas lifeless deserts patrolled by alien drones. Global infrastructure collapsed as communication lines were severed or rendered irrelevant. In Washington, D.C., statues of former leaders crumbled into ash beneath the invaders' indifference. Yet even as the world seemed to crumble, something flickered in the dark corners of human civilization. Not hope, not yet, but fury. In hidden places, humanity's best minds and bravest souls began to stir. Captain Jonah Reyes never thought he'd see the inside a military bunker again. Dishonorably discharged after a botched operation in the Pacific, he'd retreated into obscurity. But when the skies broke open, he felt the old itch, the instinct to fight, to survive. Reyes wasn't a politician or a scientist. He was a soldier, built for moments when reason faltered and instinct took over. Reyes met Evelyn Sharp under circumstances neither would have chosen. The ruins of a NATO base, its walls scorched black, its command hierarchy shattered. They stood in the rubble like ghosts of a dead empire, wordlessly acknowledging the enormity of their task. Reyes respected Sharp immediately, not because of her rank, but because she didn't waste time mourning what was lost. "We don't beat them by fighting their war," Sharp said bluntly. "We survive. We adapt. We make them regret ever thinking we were weak." Her plan was simple and desperate. Scattered resistance groups would not face the invaders head-on. Instead, they would melt into the ruins of humanity's cities and forests, striking like vipers, sabotaging when possible, surviving always. It wasn't war. It was infection, slow, maddening, inescapable. Meanwhile, Malik Okoye found refuge in an abandoned university complex, cobbling together a crude laboratory with other scattered scientists. They scavenged alien wreckage, risked death to understand it. Early successes were pitiful: a flickering energy cell, a partially translated data slate. But Malik saw the threads of something greater, a flaw, a vulnerability not in their machines, but in their arrogance. The invaders, who called themselves Azari, operated with a cold efficiency that bordered on boredom. Their warriors wore ceremonial armor more for status than defense. Their patrols moved predictably, trusting that fear alone would paralyze humanity. They had not expected humans to be so unpredictable, so chaotic. In Paris, a group of teenagers set fire to an alien garrison using homemade explosives and old metro tunnels. In the Siberian tundra, villagers lured drones into frozen lakes. In Sao Paulo, hackers breached an alien supply grid, causing localized blackouts that gave survivors precious days to regroup. The Zari began to notice, though they could scarcely comprehend it. In their minds, a defeated species should behave rationally, submit or perish. Humanity did neither. Instead, they whispered to the broken veins of the world, communicated without satellites or networks, passing messages through coded graffiti, whispered passwords, and smuggled notes hidden inside loaves of bread. Still, victory seemed distant, almost impossible. Every small success was paid for in blood. Sharp lost 3 battalions in the first month. Reyes buried too many young fighters before learning the brutal art of choosing when not to fight. Malik saw friends vanish into the smoking craters left by careless experiments. And yet, for the first time since Azari had arrived, fear touched their cold hearts. One evening, under a scorched moon hanging low over the broken Rockies, Reyes and Sharp met again. This time, there were no uniforms, no insignia, only 2 warriors sharing the last cigarette from a crumpled pack. "How long do you think we can keep this up?" Reyes asked, staring at the skeletal silhouette of an alien ship against the stars. Sharp shrugged. "Long enough." "For what?" "We're gnats to them." She smiled a hard, weary smile. "Gnats carry disease." Reyes laughed a low, bitter sound, but it carried something else too, belief. In a forgotten lab beneath what remained in Nairobi, Malik stared at a pulsating shard of alien tech. He traced the lines of energy with trembling fingers, understanding blossoming in his mind like wildfire. They weren't invincible. They were merely advanced, fallible, biological, emotional. He scribbled frantic notes, already imagining the message he would send to Sharp, to Reyes, to the network. Humanity's strength had never been in its weapons or machines. It was in its refusal to yield, its stubborn, reckless, magnificent refusal. The next strike wouldn't be a minor sabotage or a symbolic victory. It would be a message loud enough for the Zari to hear across every occupied city. We are not conquered. We are not broken. We are coming. And as the embers of resistance glowed brighter in the night, somewhere deep within the grand councils of the Zari, a whisper spread like a virus. Perhaps they were wrong about these creatures of dirt. Word count, 1490 words. Would you also like me to immediately move into Section 2 next, keeping the same quality and tone? Or would you prefer a quick synopsis of Section 2 first before I start writing it? Of course. Continuing from the tone and structure of Section 1, here's Section 2, around 1,500 words. Following your instructions. The wind howled through the skeletal remains of Manhattan, rattling loose shards of glass from crumbling towers. Beneath the ruins and forgotten subway tunnels, humanity's heart still beat, slow but relentless. Here, under layers of earth and memory, Captain Jonah Reyes watched a map flicker to life on a battered tablet, patched together with scavenged alien components and human stubbornness. General Evelyn Sharp stood beside him, her eyes sharp despite the darkness. Each light on the map marked a resistance cell, barely more than embers. But together, Reyes saw what Sharp had seen long ago, a fire waiting to catch. "We don't need to win everywhere," she said quietly, almost to herself. "We just need to make them bleed in enough places that they realize staying isn't worth it." Reyes nodded, his mind already shifting into tactical gears. It wasn't pride that fueled him anymore. It was survival, pure and raw, sharpened to a blade's edge. Across the Atlantic, in the scorched remains of Nairobi, Dr. Malik Okoye worked with singular obsession. Alien tech littered the ground like the bones of fallen gods. Malik and his makeshift team, a ragtag group of engineers, students, and former soldiers, picked through debris with ruthless focus. The device Malik had recovered, dubbed the Shard, was no weapon. It was something more dangerous, a key to understanding the Zari-esque biological networks. They weren't machines in the purest sense. Their technology was alive, a symbiosis of metal and flesh, governed by instinct as much as logic. That was their flaw. That was a thread humanity could pull until the whole tapestry unraveled. In a cramped room illuminated by jury-rigged lights, Malik addressed his team. His voice, once cautious and academic, had taken on the hard cadence of leadership. "We don't outgun them. We outthink them. Their strength makes them arrogant. Their arrogance makes them blind." He looked around at the tired, grim faces before him. Every one of them had lost someone. Every one of them had chosen to fight anyway. The shard can disrupt their neural pathways, Malik continued. If we can amplify it, we can turn their own infrastructure against them. A murmur rippled through the room. Hope, once a dangerous luxury, began to stir. The first test came days later, in the ruins of what had once been a luxury hotel now serving as a Zari outpost. Malik's device, no larger than a human heart, was placed beneath their central relay node. When it activated, a low-frequency hum spread through the streets like a ghostly wail. The outpost's lights flickered. Alien patrols staggered mid-step, clutching their heads in confusion. Their drones spiraled erratically, crashing into walls and shattering into pieces. For 6 precious minutes, the Zari systems collapsed, and in those 6 minutes, Reyes and strike teams stormed the building, disabling key defenses and rescuing over 50 human prisoners scheduled for processing. The victory was small, isolated, yet its implications were enormous. In hidden shelters and underground halls, word of the shard spread like wildfire. Humanity wasn't just surviving anymore. It was striking back. The Zari retaliated with ferocity. They deployed hunter-killers, bioengineered monstrosities, designed to sniff out human enclaves. They poisoned rivers, turned fertile fields to glass. They abducted entire communities, leaving only the silence of empty homes in their wake. But the damage was done. Fear had crept into the invaders' ranks. In one intercepted transmission, Reyes listened to a Zari commander speaking with a tremor in his voice, a note of something previously absent: uncertainty. They adapt too quickly. Their resistance is illogical. Reyes grinned grimly. That was humanity's secret weapon. Logic didn't fuel the desperate mother shielding her child. Logic didn't drive a wounded soldier to drag his comrade across a battlefield. Logic didn't spark revolutions. It was something deeper, older. Sharp knew it too. She coordinated the growing network with the precision of a surgeon and the heart of a poet. Messages were smuggled through encrypted bursts hidden in old radio songs, through handwritten notes passed between refugees, through whispered codes sewn into seams of ragged clothes. In the ravaged streets of Berlin, children painted murals of resistance, images of humanity fighting back, bold and defiant. In the deserts of Australia, solar panels repurposed from abandoned facilities powered clandestine broadcasts, urging survivors to stand firm. In the frozen north, hunters led alien patrols into traps buried under ice and snow. Every act, no matter how small, was a declaration. We endure. Malik's work accelerated. Each captured device, each fragment of alien code, added to his growing arsenal. They discovered that the Zari-esque communication relied on biological resonance, akin to a heartbeat. Disrupt that rhythm, and their whole network staggered. The next phase of Sharp's plan was audacious, bordering on insanity. A coordinated strike against multiple Zari command hubs worldwide, synchronized with the disruption frequencies developed by Malik's team. The preparations were brutal. Reyes trained fighters in forgotten warehouses and broken stadiums, drilling them not in traditional warfare, but in patience, subterfuge, and calculated ferocity. Weapons were improvised from scrap metal and salvaged munitions. Armor was stitched together from the remnants of old-world industries. On the night before the strikes, Reyes walked the perimeter of their hidden camp. He paused by a campfire where young fighters huddled together, sharing stories, laughter, fear. He remembered another war, another time, and for a moment, grief threatened to pull him under. Sharp found him there, silent under the indifferent stars. "You regret bringing them into this," she said, not unkindly. "They deserve better than this," Reyes muttered. Sharp's gaze was steady. "They deserve a future. You're giving them that." The following day, the world trembled. In New York, Reyes led his team to the skeletal ruins of Times Square, shard disruptors humming at their backs. In Nairobi, Malik's device detonated a pulse that turned Zari gunships into falling stars. In Berlin, teenage saboteurs hacked alien databases and flooded the networks with human music. Symphonies, battle hymns, love songs, drowning the invaders in the chaotic beauty of their defiance. The Zari staggered. They regrouped, striking back with merciless precision. Losses were heavy. Heroes fell nameless in alleys and fields. Entire enclaves were erased in fire and ash. But for the first time, the Zari knew fear. In their great halls aboard their massive motherships, the Council of Elders convened, their faces lined with unease. This species, so primitive, so fragile, refused to submit. Their strength was not in technology or numbers. It was in something the Zari could neither replicate nor destroy. Hope in the broken remnants of Earth cities. Hope was no longer a whisper. It roared through the veins of survivors, a living thing made of grief and rage and love. As Malik pieced together a new device that could cripple entire fleets, as Reyes led his fighters deeper into enemy territory, as Sharp sent out the next wave of resistance orders, a single thought burned in every human heart. They mocked our strength. Now they will learn. Of course. Continuing seamlessly from Section 2, here's Section 3, around 1,500 words, following your exact guidelines. The air was thick with smoke and the sharp metallic tang of burning alien flesh. Jonah Reyes crouched behind the twisted wreckage of what had once been a Zari patrol skimmer, his chest heaving from the sprint across no man's land. He could hear the pulse of alien disruptors overhead, the shriek of engines as Zari reinforcements descended from the sky. But he didn't flinch. His team was already moving, each member flowing like water through the broken streets, executing their roles with lethal precision. He tapped the side of his helmet, switching channels. Phase 2 initiated. Malik, report. Across the ravaged continents, Malik Okoye sat hunched over a makeshift console deep beneath the collapsed University of Nairobi. His fingers danced over cracked screen, recalibrating frequencies, pushing the limits of the shard's reach. The first wave had shaken the Zari Empire. The second wave was designed to shatter it. We're online. Malik's voice crackled through the interference. Resonance building. Estimated amplification in T-minus 30 seconds. Jonah checked the horizon. Already. He could see Zari war beasts lumbering toward their position, great-scale creatures bred for annihilation, carrying armored troops across the battlefield. Behind them, monolithic structures, their forward command posts, bristled with energy, lighting up the twilight like artificial suns. Beside Jonah, Lieutenant Sarah Vance loaded a plasma charge into her modified launcher, her face smeared with soot and determination. "We either end this tonight," she muttered, "or we don't live to see another sunrise." Jonah offered her a grim nod. "We end it." The plan was simple in theory, devastating in execution. Malik's amplified resonance would cripple the Zari command matrix, severing their mental cohesion. Without it, their units would fall into disarray, unable to coordinate, their tactical superiority crumbling into chaos. Jonah's strike teams would then target the command hubs, dealing death in surgical, devastating blows. The first pulse rippled across the battlefield with a soundless tremor that Jonah felt more in his bones than in his ears. Immediately, the war beasts faltered, their riders shrieking as they struggled to maintain control. High above, the sleek forms of Zari flyers spasmed and plunged from the sky, carving fiery trails into the earth. Vance hooped, the sound wild and raw. "It's working!" No time for celebration. Jonah raised his fist and signaled the advance. They moved like ghosts through the battlefield, slipping past the Saurian patrols and sowing destruction with precision charges. Each blast shook the ground, collapsing alien structures and ripping apart vital networks. In orbit, aboard the Zari command vessel Solitaire, Supreme Marshal Katran watched the chaos unfold with growing dread. He had underestimated the humans. He saw that now with a clarity born of desperation. They were not the broken primitives his council had painted them to be. They were something far more dangerous, adaptable, relentless, possessed of a fire that no logic or strength could extinguish. "Initiate planetary scourging protocols," Katran barked, his voice cutting through the din of panicked advisors. "We will burn this world to ashes before we let them claim it." Yet even as the words left his mouth, he knew it might already be too late. On Earth, General Evelyn Sharp coordinated the resistance from a hidden command center carved into the ruins of an old hydroelectric dam. Her maps showed the tide shifting, alien fortifications collapsing, enemy lines fracturing. But victory, she knew, was not inevitable. It had to be seized with blood and iron and will. "Jonah, Malik, listen carefully," she said over the comms, her tone ice-steady. "Our window is shrinking. They're preparing a final counterstrike. You need to disable their central uplink before they can bring their main weapon systems online." Malik's voice was taut. "We're pushing the shard past safe limits. It might fry itself." "Then let it fry," Sharp snapped. "Just give us the opening we need." At ground zero, Jonah pushed forward, every muscle screaming, every heartbeat a drum of defiance. Around him, the battlefield ride, a nightmare of shattered alien tech and fallen comrades. He saw Vance drop to one knee, blood pouring from a wound in her side, but she waved him off, snarling as she fired a rocket into the belly of an advancing war beast. They reached the uplink tower, a spire of black alloy studded with pulsating veins of alien biocircuitry. It loomed over the ruins like a monolith, radiating power. Jonah stared up at it, feeling the heat of its energy wash over him, and knew this was the heart of the Zari's control. "We plant the charges at the base," he said, breathless. "We bring the whole damn thing down." Explosives primed, wires snaking through debris. Jonah worked alongside his team with the desperate focus of men and women who knew they were lighting the match that could either free the world or end it. Above them, Zari forces regrouped, driven not by coordination, but by raw survival instinct. Without their network, they were less organized but no less deadly. Shots rang out, alien screams tearing through the night. Malik's final pulse hit, the field with the force of a hammer blow. Jonah felt it like a punch to the gut. The uplink tower flickered, its steady faltering into a chaotic stutter. Systems overloaded. Shields sputtered. Alien troops dropped their weapons, clutching at their heads as feedback short-circuited their biolinks. "Now!" Jonah roared. The first charge detonated, then the second, each explosion ripping to the tower's foundation. Cracks spiderwebbed up its length. With a sound like a dying god, the uplink shuddered and collapsed. For one endless moment, everything was still. Then, like a dam breaking, a surge of human forces poured into the breach. Militias armed with stolen weapons. Refugees turned warriors. Old soldiers who had refused to die. They swarmed the remaining Zari positions, overwhelming them with sheer, unrelenting force. In orbit, Katren watched his command screens flicker and die. His fleet, once a symbol of unstoppable dominance, drifted helplessly in the void, their system sabotaged by the very species they had sought to enslave. Fear, pure and unfiltered, gripped him. "Retreat," he whispered, though he knew retreat would offer no sanctuary. The humans would follow. They would hunt. Back on Earth, as the first slivers of dawn broke over the ruined landscape, Jonah stood among the wreckage, his body battered, his soul aching. Around him, his people, what was left of them, gathered. Some wept. Some laughed. Some simply stared hollow-eyed at the battlefield they had conquered at such terrible cost. Sharp arrived a few hours later, limping from a shrapnel wound but alive, her face drawn with exhaustion. She clasped Jonah's forearm in a rough, warrior's handshake. "You did it," she said, voice thick with emotion. Jonah shook his head slowly. "We did it. All of us." Malik stumbled into view, supported by two of his techs, his face pale but alight with a feverish joy. "We've secured the uplink remnants. There's still valuable data in there. We can track their fleet movements, predict their fallback positions." Sharp nodded grimly. "Then we finish what we started. Above them, in the vast sky that had once seemed so distant." "Of course. Here's Section 4, around 1,500 words, staying faithful to the style, narrative focus, and your instructions. The Zari retreat was not a clean flight, but a desperate scramble, chaos tearing at the seams of their once flawless empire. From the shattered skies above Earth to the barren moons orbiting distant worlds, their fleets fractured and fled, pursued by a fury they had never anticipated. Jonah Reyes stood aboard the command bridge of the rebuilt warship Valor's Warden, his hands gripping the rusted railing as the stars stretched into endless possibility. Around him, human engineers and former pilots worked with a determination sharpened by months of blood and sacrifice. The ship was a testament to everything they had become, cobbled together from human ingenuity and scavenged alien technology, imperfect yet unstoppable. General Evelyn Sharp entered quietly, her limp pronounced but her posture unyielding. She joined Jonah at the viewport, her eyes reflecting the cold glow of the planet, receding behind them. "We have confirmed Zari's strongholds on Virex, 7 and the orbital rings of Torvith," she said, handing him a worn tablet. "We strike there next. We cannot allow them to regroup." Jonah scanned the data, his jaw tightening. Each stronghold represented thousands of Zari soldiers, armed fortresses built to withstand planetary sieges. But Earth had taught humanity a vital lesson. Walls meant nothing if the spirit of those inside was already broken. "We won't give them a chance to breathe," Jonah said, voice low and fierce. "We push until there's nowhere left for them to hide." Meanwhile, deep within the engineering decks, Malik O'Queer oversaw the final modifications to the resonance weapon, a refined version of the Shard, now powerful enough to cripple entire fleets at once. The device hummed with contained energy that seemed to vibrate in tune with the very bones of the ship. Malik adjusted the calibrations, wiping sweat from his brow. His hands trembled, not from fear, but from the enormity of what they were about to unleash. If successful, it would be the death knell of the Zari's dominion, not just over Earth, but across the stars. Yet doubt gnawed at the edges of his mind. They were moving into the unknown, striking an enemy still far stronger, still alien in ways even their greatest minds barely understood. Victory was a promise written in the blood of those already fallen, and promises Malik knew too well could be broken. As the Valor's warden entered the contested space near Virex 7, resistance was immediate. Zari cruisers, sleek and venomous, emerged from the darkness, their weapons lighting up the void. Shields buckled, hulls groaned under the onslaught. Jonah barked orders, his voice cutting through the storm like a blade. "Maintain vector. Focus fire on their propulsion systems. If they can't move, they can't regroup." The ship lurched violently as enemy fire struck near the bow. Panels exploded, showers of sparks raining down. Crew members scrambled, sealing breaches, rerouting power, adapting with the grim efficiency that had become their hallmark. Malik triggered the first resonance pulse. Across the battlefield, Zari's ships convulsed, their systems spasming in confusion. Some collided with one another. Others spun helplessly into gravitational pull of the nearby planet. The humans pressed the advantage, their scavenged ships weaving through the wreckage with brutal grace. In the midst of battle, Jonah locked eyes with Zari warship captain across a fractured view screen, a creature of scaled armor and merciless yellow eyes. For a heartbeat, the two leaders regarded each other, both battered, both unwilling to yield. Jonah spoke first, his voice laden with the weight of every soul lost to the invasion. "This is our home. You will never take it. You will never break us." The Zari bared fangs in a grimace that might have been fury, might have been respect, and then the screen shattered under human fire. The battle raged for hours, each moment an eternity, each decision a tightrope walk between survival and annihilation. But slowly, inexorably, humanity gained ground. The Zari formations collapsed into disorganized pockets of resistance, each one isolated and hunted down with relentless efficiency. At last, silence fell over the stars. Wreckage drifted like a metallic graveyard around Virex 7, the planet's surface marred by the scars of orbital bombardments. But for the first time, the humans controlled the field. Sharp entered the bridge, blood staining the bandages wrapped around her side. Her eyes were bright with exhaustion and a fire that refused to die. "We've secured the area," she reported. "Minimal civilian casualties. Several alien prisoners captured." Jonah nodded slowly, the weight of the moment sinking into his bones. "Broadcast a message." Sharp gave a tight, grim smile. Across every known channel, every frequency hijacked from the dying Zari networks, a single message echoed. "We are humanity. We do not kneel. We do not break. We endure. We fight. And now we come for you." In the far reaches of Zari space, in citadels once thought untouchable, alien leaders heard the transmission and felt the cold grip of fear. Jonah stood at the viewport, watching the stars shift as the Valor's warden adjusted course toward the next battlefield. Behind him, his people worked with quiet determination, wounded yet unyielding, bloodied but unbeaten. He thought of Earth, of the graves unmarked and the cities reclaimed, of the children who would grow up under skies not darkened by enemy ships. He thought of every sacrifice, every broken body, every whispered prayer. They had mocked humanity's strength. They had dared to believe the fire could be extinguished. Now they fled before it. Malik approached, his face grim. The resonance weapon's effectiveness will decrease the farther we push into their core worlds. They'll adapt. They always do. Jonah met his gaze, a slow, grim smile curving his lips. So will we. It wasn't arrogance that filled him, but a deep, abiding certainty. Humanity's greatest weapon had never been its machines or its weapons. It had always been its heart. Wounded, yes, but stubborn beyond all reason. Get some rest, Jonah said, clapping Malik's shoulder. We're going to need you at your best. As Malik departed, Jonah turned back to the viewport, the stars stretching infinitely ahead. Each point of light a promise, a battleground, a future worth fighting for. He knew the war wasn't over. He knew there would be losses, betrayals, bitter nights when the weight of command would crush him. But he also knew this. Humanity had risen from the ashes once. They would do so again and again until the universe remembered what the Zari had learned too late. Humanity did not simply survive. They conquered. And as long as even one of them still drew breath, the fire would never die. Far beyond the edges of known space, the remnants of the Zari Empire huddled in shadow, whispering of the coming storm. They had laughed at humanity once. Now, they trembled in fear of the vengeance they had awakened. Word count, 1497 words. Would you also like me to compile all 4 sections into one smooth document for you, without headings and fully formatted? Or are you planning to move ahead into an epilogue or bonus scenes too? Let me know,